This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 87 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. And today our topic is all about travelling with your parents. And of course I mean travelling as an adult with your parents. I think plenty of us have travelled with our parents as a kid. I know I was lucky enough to do it quite a few times. But I've also been lucky enough to travel with my parents as an adult, which is completely different kettle of fish, I think. I have to say, most of the times I've travelled with my parents as an adult is when I was teaching English abroad. And that brings me to our great sponsor this month, Korea China. Like my segue? I thought I did that nicely. So, as you might know, teaching English is a very popular way to earn some money while exploring the world. I'll definitely second that. And China has one of the largest ESL markets, so it's a pretty popular choice, just even thanks to the sheer number of jobs available. And strong salaries are combined with a low cost of living to make it easy for teachers to live a reasonably comfortable lifestyle. And if you're fairly good with your money, you can save money for your future travels as well. That's certainly what I did. My mum and stepfather came to visit me both when I was teaching in Japan and in Germany. And my dad and stepmother came to visit me in Japan as well. And in both cases, we travelled around together, which was really awesome. In fact, in particular, when my mum came to visit me when I was teaching in Germany, I think she came several times. This was perhaps the second time. At that time, we spent a couple of weeks together, just my mum and I, backpacking in Russia, Estonia, and in other parts of Germany too. It was awesome. But anyway, back to my point. Teaching and living abroad is truly a fantastic way to enable more travel. So if you're keen to explore Asia, then getting a job through Korea China might be an excellent way to go. But anyway, now on to my first guest to talk about a trip taken with parents, and it's Jo Castro returning, one of my lovely favourite travel blogging friends who's based now in Western Australia. And she has a really interesting travelling with your parents story. It begins on her honeymoon, which is not a situation where you are anticipating travelling with a parent.
So we got married in Durban at a tiny little chapel in Durban called the Old Fort. And I'd organised our wedding. It was rather slapdash in those days. We didn't have very much money and we were living in Namibia and working in Namibia. So I arranged the wedding in Durban because Dave's parents lived in Durban and we were going to be moving from Namibia that year that we were getting married. So we kind of did a thing all by phone. Obviously, there was no email in those days. It was phone and letter. So I arranged the wedding in Durban and my mum was in England and sadly my dad had just died. So she wanted to come over. So we decided that my proxy, they were actually my sister's godmother, and she was my proxy godmother as well, and her husband, who I think was 75 at the time and she was about 68 or something, they said they would come over and he would give me away because he was a good person to give me away, and then mum would go with them and travel with them. So they all came over very kindly to give me away and for mum to be there, and obviously it was quite a sad time for her as well. It was just about 4 months after my dad had died. And we said, well, you know, if you're coming, you better come away with us. We're going on honeymoon to the Kruger, the national park. So would you like to come? So they all jumped at the chance.
Did they politely decline at first and say, oh no, it's your honeymoon? Or did they all just say, yeah, let's go?
No, it was a vehemently, yes, let's go. Let's have an adventure. So again, you know, we had no money. We had this old car. It was a Nissan Skyline, this orange Nissan Skyline. And we all piled into that, all five of us, with not very much luggage in the boot of the car. And everybody, the wedding party waved us off from Lil and Bob's, Dave's mum and dad. And so off we went on honeymoon, the five of us packed into this little car.
Oh, and how romantic.
Yes. And then it's funny now, but it wasn't at the time. Then Dave had to carry Mum across the threshold at the hotel because poor Mum, little did we know it, she was sick in the car going up we went to Waterfall Onda on the way, which was a beautiful little spot on the way to Kruger National Park. And we stayed in this lovely little hotel with thatched rondavels, and Mum was very sick, and so she got out of the car and she absolutely just about collapsed. So Dave had to pick her up and carry her over the threshold instead of me.
That is not what you imagine for your honeymoon, I'm sure, when you're daydreaming about these things.
And then, she wasn't very well the whole time, and she bravely carried on and enjoyed it as best she could. It was a great adventure for her, so she really, really wanted to enjoy it. And we stayed in the Kruger, and we saw lots of game, and we had a great time. But Mum was suffering badly, being sick and feeling very faint and very off. And when we got back we moved then to Lesotho. So after the honeymoon, we went to Lesotho, and Mum came with us because we bought a house there, and Dave's next job was in Lesotho in the Highlands. So she came there to settle us in and be with us for a while, and my godparents went back to England, and she stayed on for a few weeks. And so I took her to the doctor, and he found out that she was allergic to chloroquine, the anti-malarial. Because obviously in those days, well, I think you still do for Kruger, but we had to take anti-malarial tablets, all of us. Heavy things in those days, you could get quite sick from them, but we didn't know, and we'd taken them before, and so we'd suggested to them, take this, that, and the other, and they did. And so he said, no, you're allergic to chloroquine. And then she came off that, and I promise you, within about 3 or 4 days, she was as right as rain. But,
oh my goodness!
I thought she was having a nervous breakdown, or terrible going on, or she was terribly ill, and no, it was these tablets. So so that's the saga of our honeymoon. But we had a lovely time, notwithstanding. Poor Mum, I just feel so sorry for her.
Yes. Here, we'll suggest you take these tablets, and they'll make sure you don't get sick. And there she is, being terribly sick. Poor thing.
Absolutely. And then actually I do have another story leading on from that. Then it became quite a habit that Mum would come on holiday with us to various places, and she would come over and stay with us in Africa for a couple of months at a time.
Oh, beautiful.
And one time Dave said he was going to cycle he had a break between jobs, and he was going to cycle from the top of South Africa down to the bottom. So from the Zimbabwean border down to the bottom. And he said, well, and Sam, my son then was 20 months old, and I was still breastfeeding him. And I said, oh God, I can't do this on my own. So he said, call your mum. So I called Mum, then she was 61 or 62, and she'd never been on a camping holiday in her life. And I said, Mum, will you come with me? We're going to put up a tent every night and follow Dave around.
Oh my
she
goodness.
said, yes. So she was always up for these things. So she flew over, and off we went again. And but now she knows that she can't take malaria tablets.
Yes,
so
true.
To start off, we're in this very heavily malaria area just south of Zimbabwe, up in a sort of a game area as well. And I can remember one night it was like 42 degrees, and we're camping, and we're sitting around having what we call a braai in South Africa, a barbecue. And we've got the potjie pot boiling, and because Dave was big into potjies in those days, which is a big cast iron pot, and you throw things in and it bubbles away on the campfire. So we're there 42 degrees, sweltering, me and Dave in practically nothing. And there's Mum dressed up from her neck down to her toes with gloves on and a beanie on.
Oh no.
She can't get bitten by mosquitoes because she can't take tablets. So.
Oh, your poor Mum. But what a trooper she is for coming along on these adventures. I love it.
Absolutely. Just so game. So, yeah. Oh, dear. So, yes, we've had some funny times.
Now, Joe's mum still lives in England, so I sadly never had the chance to meet her. But doesn't she sound awesome? I'm sure we would get along famously. I love her have-a-go attitude and agreeing to come on to all kinds of strange travelling plans that Joe and her husband have dreamt up over the years. I just think it's fantastic. So obviously Joe has got a lot of pleasure out of travelling with her mum over the years. Now, my next guest is Kati Craythorne, who is German, but has lived in Australia for a couple of decades, I think. And her mum came out from Germany to celebrate her 60th birthday on a trip in Australia. And this was, a little bit of an unusual trip for Kati.
It was different because I travelled with my mum and her husband. And my husband, so it was a bit of a, not my kind of standard holiday that I would do. My mum just turned 60, so she wanted to come to Australia and celebrate her 60th away from everybody at home and do this.
Very smart.
Yes, and she's wanted to go and see the outback, and I don't know, for long, probably ever since I moved to Australia, which is 17 years ago or something. Mm-hmm. Long time ago now. And so we thought, okay, well, we'll make it happen for our 60th. And so we did. But you don't tend to travel with your parents. Well, I don't tend to travel with my parents a lot, these days.
No, not as an adult. Yeah, it's rare.
No, exactly. There's a point where you sort of stop. And, I did see my mum in 2007 in the US. Anyway. Other story. So we thought, we'll do this road trip from Darwin down to Alice via Uluru. And it was just so different because I had to – normally what we would do, we'd grab our four-wheel drive and we'd go camping, or we'd just, stop wherever, we'd have a rough route and then we'd just stop what looked interesting and that. But this time, Mum wasn't really into camping. Accommodation is ridiculously pricey,
I bet.
Ridiculous.
Right.
So I was kind of stuck in that, how are we going to get from Darwin to Alice and not, spend thousands of dollars?
Yes. So what did you do?
Well, we rented a camper van.
Uh-huh.
And my husband and I, we slept in the camper van, so we kind of stayed at caravan parks, and I would just I'd book cabins and motel-style rooms or safari tents, depending on what was available there.
Yes.
So that worked quite well. So they could sleep in a bed. They had their own little room or tent or something. Mm-hmm. And with those safari tents, they always have beds in them and, blankets and everything and pillows and all that. So that actually worked really well.
Oh, good idea then.
Yeah, but it was a lot of planning trying to find out where all these caravan parks are and, all this accommodation that you could kind of stay at.
Yes, to have both levels, like you guys just in the van.
Exactly.
And oh, interesting.
To kind of pre-book everything because that's, I wouldn't sort of, like with a road trip, I wouldn't pre-book everything. I might have a couple of things, if I knew that was busy, those places are really popular.
But otherwise you just turn up and move along when you want to move along. Mm.
Yeah, so, but overall it was an interesting holiday, just because it's different traveling with your family, and everybody travels so differently, different people prefer different style, and I'm kind of a go. If I have, if the daylight, if I have got from 6 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock at night, I'm going to be on the road. I'm going to be hiking. I'm going to be running around. I'm going to be driving, whatever it is.
Yeah, I want to see stuff.
Whereas my mum, and, she is a bit older, obviously, she's much more relaxed. She just wants to have, relax and sit and enjoy a cup of tea and that. So finding that compromise was quite a challenge for me personally.
That's pretty hard, yeah.
Yeah. So it worked out in the end because we kind of made compromises and then had days where it's like, okay, right, you just sit here and, why don't you just walk around the campground basically and go for these few little walks and, just enjoy your cup of tea or, have lunch here at the bistro. And then Russ and I, we would run off and do this big hike or something.
Yeah, good idea. Yeah.
So that kind of worked quite well. And
the negotiating and the compromising was like guys didn't have big arguments or anything. You managed to.
No. My husband was really worried because Mum and I, we tend to argue a fair bit. And he was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be the peacekeeper and these people are just going to argue and they're all going to do it in German and I won't be able to understand anything.
Oh, yes, that makes it extra difficult, doesn't it?
And he actually said that was really good that I didn't understand everything. thing because of kind of a complete ignorance.
True. He can pretend he just thought you were excited, not shouting and angry. Yeah.
But it actually worked well, and we kind of just said, oh, do you want to have a rest day? And they go, yes. And we'll go, okay, well, we don't need a rest day. We'll just run off and see these other things and do these other things. So that was actually, it worked out way better than I'd expected, which I was really pleased about because, it kind of wasn't my holiday. It was my mum's holiday, but it was still my holiday because
and you had to organise it.
I organised it, and I still had 3 weeks annual leave. So it was, a bit funny in that way. It was not mine, but mine.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, it worked out really well.
I was really glad to hear that this trip worked out well for everyone. And I think the spirit of compromise is a very important one if you're travelling with your parents. Although I actually try to think about what kind of compromises I've made when I've been travelling with my parents, and I think I'm really lucky, or perhaps it's because they brought me up this way, but we have pretty similar travelling styles. I mean, when my mum and I spent a couple of weeks across Russia in homestays and then in Estonia, in Tallinn and Berlin and Munich on either side of that trip, we just travelled with hand luggage only. And my mum would have been, goodness me, I hope I'm not wrong, I haven't thought to work this out, but probably 60-ish at the time, but it didn't bother her to travel out of a backpack. It's something she'd done before, and I think she's proud to do it. And I'm happy to do the same, and it certainly makes life easier if you're both hand luggage only, and we had it all that way. And I think, it's easy to travel with people who've got similar travelling styles, but harder if you have to make a lot of compromises. But Kati did well with her family. Now, my final guest today is Eva Vesterling, who we've had on before as well. And she has developed a really beautiful culture of travelling with her parents as an adult, a real tradition and just a lovely way to do it, I think. And it all began because she gave her father a trip for his birthday one year.
My dad is the biggest Egypt fan in the world, I think. He grew up in a city where they have a huge Egyptian museum. And when he was little, the entrance was free on Sundays. So his mom would send the kids off to the museum on Sundays when the weather was too bad to play outside. And so he learned so much about Egyptian history and culture, and he always wanted to go. But he had me and my brother when he was fairly young, and he was still studying, and they just never had the money to go. And so when I was in university, and I studied medicine, so I was pretty sure I would be able to afford to travel to Egypt at some point, I actually started talking to him about going there together. And once I had my first job and made some money, I started saving up. And then in 2010, I actually gave him the trip for his birthday, or the promise of the trip.
Oh, that's so lovely.
Yeah, and then, we wanted to go in March of 2011, but then the Arab Spring happened, and things were a bit unsure. So the agency offered free rescheduling, so we changed it over to go in September. And it wasn't just my dad and me. My stepmom also came with us, but she had to pay for herself. So we went in September for 12 days, I think, in total, and did a river cruise on the Nile and visited so many places. And then we had 3 days in Cairo and then went out to the desert. And it was so much fun. It was the best thing to see my dad stand in front of the pyramids, all in awe, because it was the first time he's ever really traveled anywhere exciting,
Wow.
And it was like a kid in a toy shop. He would stand there, his mouth half open, just taking it all in. And it made the trip so much more special for me also, just seeing that, because I've traveled so much. I'm just like, oh yeah, cool, the pyramids, And for him, it was just the best thing ever. So that was really, really great.
That's fabulous. What a lovely daughter you are.
Well, I was kind of surprised that we got along for 12 days nonstop. I was expecting a bit more, getting annoyed, but it was fine.
Wow.
Yeah,
cool.
Totally fine. And, for me, it was a good way to sort of pay back my, childhood debt, or, he's paid all through university for me, and he provided me with a car and all things he didn't have to,
Yes.
It's just, he just even though he didn't really have that much, he kept giving. So it just felt good to give something back.
Especially something like that he probably wouldn't do for himself, and that obviously he got so much joy out of. That's gorgeous.
Yes, definitely. So yeah, that was a very, very special trip. And then a year later, maybe, or 2 years later, my parents asked me if I would go to London with them, because I used to have a boyfriend who lived in London, and so I spent a lot of time there, and I know the city really well. And they weren't really sure if they would get along with their limited English, and they were just too big city. So I think it was 4 or 5 years ago that we went to London for a long weekend, like 4 days together. And yeah, they had to brave the local transport because I was staying with a friend, and I put them in a really cute bed and breakfast that I had found online. And that was like such a lucky catch, because normally you hear that they're really kind of trashy and bad, but this one is lovely. I've stayed there so many times since then. So I had to meet them in the city, and I had to trust them to find their way. And they were like so excited about that, and kind of scared, and then so proud when they made it. And ever since then, we do one city trip every year. So the year after we went to London again, we gave that to my dad as a present for his 60th birthday. And my brother came along for that trip as well. And then the year after that, we went to Rome. Last year, we went to Barcelona. That was another fun trip. And yeah, this year, my stepmom gets to choose, because she just turned 60 and she got another trip from us, but for a city of her choice. So I'm excited to see where we're going.
Oh, that's wonderful. What a great family tradition. I love it.
Yeah, I love that it turned into a tradition. It's so much fun.
It's a nice way to and obviously you figured out that you get along fine when you travel, so.
Yes, I mean, especially if it's just for like 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
And Barcelona was actually the first place that none of us had ever been to before. So that was kind of a new thing also, because they couldn't just rely on me to know where we're going.
Oh, that's really lovely. But it's funny, there's kind of a bit of role reversal going on there, isn't it? When the parents are relying on the kids to be the ones who know what's going on.
I guess it is in a way, but it's fun. I actually enjoy it. And it's nice to get them sort of a little bit into my world, because I travel so much. I love traveling, and I think they do too. They're just a little bit scared, a little reluctant. My dad doesn't like flying, so I wanted to convince him to go to Cambodia with me to see Angkor Wat, because I'm sure he would love it. But he said he's not going to fly that far. We would have to take a train. And then I said, I'm not ever going to have enough holidays to do that.
No, that would take a while.
But then now he's retired, so who knows? Maybe I'll take a break at some point and we'll actually go. I don't know.
That's wonderful. I totally love this tradition, but I have to say it's much easier to have a tradition of doing short, wonderful trips with your parents every year if you live in the middle of Europe and there's all these amazing places around you. So it's probably not something I'm going to realistically be able to start from Perth. But still, the idea is gorgeous, and I think Eva and her family have had some really fabulous experiences together. I think it's great stuff. Well, that is it for my episode about travelling with your parents. I'm very keen to know if you've ever travelled with your parents as an adult, and was it a success or was it a disaster? I honestly expected to hear some more disaster stories when I put this topic out, but I've had only wonderful, warm, fuzzy, cool stuff, which is very pleasing, and perhaps I don't know why I'd expected anything else. So I've only had good experiences too. So that's it for episode 87. Let me tell you all about our guests and where to find them. Before that, of course, a big, big, big thank you to our great sponsor, Korea China, and you can find them at koreachina.com. Then we chatted with Jo from Lifestyle50, lifestyle50.com, and her travel blog is at zigazag.com. I chatted next with Kati from Queensland and Beyond, who is logically at queenslandandbeyond.com. And lastly, Eva from notscaredofthejetlag.com. Actually, I love the title of her site because I am scared of the jet lag, but I still do it anyway. When you live in Western Australia, there's jet lag wherever you go. So thank you to everyone who contributed their fabulous stories about travelling with your parents. If you have your own stories, pop over to our Facebook group. We're at Thoughtful Travellers on Facebook. There'll be a link in the show notes, or just search for Thoughtful Travellers while you're on Facebook. And you can find that link and every other link I've mentioned in the show notes. And for this episode, the show notes will be at notaballerina.com/87. And if I had one last request of you, the podcast is coming up to its second anniversary, nearly 2 years of the Thoughtful Travel podcast. So if you have been enjoying these episodes, I would be so grateful if you could hop over to iTunes or Apple Podcasts and leave a rating or review. If you left one a long time ago, before the show switched networks, it may have been lost. And if you have it in you to go and leave another one, I would be so grateful. Anyway, thank you again for listening. Talk again soon. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.